Hey guys, I'm back after a bit of a hiatus. Just taking the plastic off of this cucumber. If you're new here, my name is Ashley and I write about food and recipes over at Big Flavors from a Tiny Kitchen. It's bigflavorstinykitchen.com. I'm on social media at Big Flavors. On Twitter, it's at Big Flavors Blog. I typically go live every Friday around 10 a.m. Hi, Rob. It's been a couple weeks. We had a lot of hard stuff happening with my family, but I should be back to the regular schedule now. Hi, Amy and Eleanor, and Maggie, if you're there also. So today I'm going to make a really easy meal that I've been making a lot that I haven't yet posted on my site because I haven't photographed it. Part of it's because sheet pan meals sometimes aren't super photogenic, but I plan to do that soon. But I figured I'd give you the recipe. It's really easy, and I'm going to show you how I make a full meal out of it. There's a couple different variations you could do, and I have a much more detailed, hi Mike, I have a much more detailed version for making Persian style kebabs. I think I have a couple on my website maybe, but there's tons of variations. This one is just like easy. The whole meal can be like done in 20 minutes or so. You don't have to make rice on the side, but if you want to, this is the order that I do things so that everything's ready at the same time. So I'm gonna start with some basmati rice. I'm gonna cook it in my Instant Pot. You can do it on the stovetop. If I'm doing it on the stovetop, I usually do a cup of rice to 1 3/4 cups of water and a little pinch of salt. Instant Pot just makes it easy. I don't have to pay attention to it. And if you're making, this is Indian basmati rice. If you're making legit Persian style rice, you'll want to, there's a whole method for soaking and rinsing. You get the excess starch off. You can make a crust on the bottom. And I have recipes for stuff like that on my website also. I left a link above to all my Persian recipes that are actually up right now. So if that's of interest to you, you can check that out. So what I do for the quick version though, basmati in a rice cooker, Instant Pot, stovetop, whichever. I put in the rice, the water, a good generous sprinkling of dried dill. You can't really see what that looks like, but just like really little flakes. For some reason, my family always did dried dill in their Persian rice, sometimes with lima beans, sometimes not. I'll add a big pinch of salt to it. And then I'm just gonna hit the rice button. And so this, once it reaches pressure, it'll be 12 minutes and it'll be done. The next thing I do is get the kebab meat mixed. I've been experimenting, oh, it's just letting me know it's ready. I've been experimenting with a couple different variations of ground beef, and I found that 93% lean is great for a sheet pan meal because if you use fattier beef, when you go to flip the kebab over, you're gonna have to like scrape some kind of gross looking fat, which is fine, it's doable, but sometimes it doesn't get as nice and brown on top, and I kind of like that. So this is 1 pound of 93% lean beef. Lamb would be great too, but probably a little fattier. In with that, I'm gonna add a large egg. I'm gonna take my rings off because the best way to mix this is with your hands. So got 1 large egg. Right on top. 3 tablespoons of chopped parsley. My parsley is a little sad today, but it's what I had. Hi, Nicole. Yes, it is a sheet pan meal, and if you don't want to make rice on the side, this is really would be great in a pita, like as a sandwich. You could put them. You could do like a little bowl. If you have leftover rice, that'd be great too, because it's already ready. Okay, so I got the egg, the beef, some fresh parsley. And then when I make kebab normally, I grate an onion in there. It kind of keeps it nice and moist. Sorry if you don't like that word. I know a lot of people don't. But for this, I use dried minced onion. Because again, I'm trying to make a quick version, and it adds the flavor. They're like toasted little flakes of onion, and they're really fragrant. So I put 1.5 teaspoons in there, so fairly good amount. And then I'm going to preheat my broiler on high. I almost forgot. If you don't have a broiler or you're afraid of the broiler, just cook it on a really high temperature. You'll just need to keep your eye on it. I'm going to add a teaspoon of kosher salt. And some black pepper. And then a 1/4 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. And this is really kind of what helps like bring in some Middle Eastern flavors, and it adds a nice flavor to it. So that's all that's in the kebab mix. It's really straightforward. Before I mix this with my hands, I'm going to line a sheet pan, a half sheet, with foil, and then I'm going to spray it with oil or cooking spray, whatever you have. If you have non-stick baking sheets, you don't want to use them in the broiler unless there's a brand that says that that's safe to do without ruining the non-stick or releasing any weird chemicals. But so I just line it. It helps make cleanup a lot easier. You might get a little bit of oil and meat stuff underneath it, but for the most part, it makes it a lot easier to deal with. So I have a little olive oil sprayer. Just kind of give it a light coating. Just makes everything easier to flip later. All right, so sheet pan is ready. Now you have to get in and mix the meat mixture. If you have time before you start, I like to take, hey Rich, I like to take the meat out of the fridge so it's not so cold on your hands, but sometimes ground meat can be super cold and kind of gross. So mix this, try not to overwork it too much because it'll make the meat a little tight, but it's good to kind of distribute all the ingredients through there. So you're just kind of squishing it around until everything is mixed in. And then what I like to do is I flatten it down in the bowl like that and just kind of score into 8. You can make them bigger if you like. I just find that 8 is good because you can have, it'll serve 4 or maybe 3 if you're really hungry. My son absolutely, he's 7, he loves this. I made it yesterday again, and he really likes it. So I'm just kind of forming them into these little kind of maybe 1/2 inch thick patties and gonna spread them out over the sheet pan. You just want to make sure that you kind of push them together, squish them so that they form one big piece. And you can make them round if you want, like hamburgers, or you can make them smaller, make like little meatballs. So just that with 8 of them, and I kind of spread them out. I had originally started making this as just a quick way to like get my kebab fix. And one day I realized I always like having like usually grilled tomatoes and onions with this type of meal, but I realized I could just broil them along with the kebab, and then it's like a much faster version of this. And while this is in the oven, I'm going to make a quick version of mastikiyar. It's a yogurt cucumber sauce that's goes great with pretty much any Persian meal. But if you like Indian food, it's kind of similar to raita. Anytime I have a Middle Eastern or Indian meal, I always like to put a lot of the yogurt accompaniment with it. So once these are formed, they're going to go into the oven for 9 minutes, it'll depend on your broiler, but about 9 minutes, and then I flip them over, and then I cook them for another, 8 minutes is what works with my broiler, but 8 minutes, and then I flip them, and then I cook them for another 5, and I'm not great at getting them even. You can see like this one's a little bit of a baby one, but I think I might just make 7 today. Anywhere between 6 and 8 is usually good. So I've got all of this beef mixture spread out on the pan like this, just kind of leaving a little room in between. And let me see if you guys have any questions. Hey, Natiel! Oh my gosh. I like to take a full pint of tomatoes. If you're not into grilled tomatoes or broiled tomatoes, they get so nice and extra sweet when you put them in there. They just caramelize in the oven, and it's great. They'll kind of pop when you cook them. So I just kind of take the whole tray and just sprinkle them around. And if you have larger tomatoes, just cut them into wedges, and that'll work fine. So that's done. And the only other thing I add, except for salt and pepper and a little oil, is some, I have onions hanging from my ceiling over here, some yellow onion wedges. So I like how the yellow onions work. You could use white onions, you could use red onions if you have extra onions to get rid of. Use whatever you got. Shallots would even probably be good. Usually like 2 small ones or a large one. You just don't want to crowd the pan too much, but we'll see. I really like the onions, and sometimes if we end up eating all of the onions and tomatoes, when I go to make leftovers, or to like heat up the leftovers, I'll broil a couple or pan fry a couple of tomatoes and onions to go with the leftovers. So you can just cut them into wedges or like 1/2-inch thick slices. So just, like chunks kind of like this. And I'll put those on the, hey Sam, I'll put them on the sheet kind of intermingled with the tomatoes and the kebab. I haven't tried this with lamb, but I think it would be really good. I haven't tried it with ground turkey or chicken. If you were going to do that, you might have to let it cook a little bit longer to make sure that the poultry is all the way cooked through. And if you do use a poultry, I would use like lean, but not just the breast meat, because that can be a little too lean and tend to dry out. Okay, so tomatoes, onions, all on the sheet pan. Let's see how I can do this without making a big mess. I'm gonna drizzle a little bit of olive oil on the tomatoes and onions, and then I'm gonna sprinkle everything with more salt and pepper. Just kind of a light drizzle. You could probably use the spray again if you wanted to. Just kind of seasons everything. Oh, also, my niece, Eleanor, she's 1.5, and she learned how to say the word cook, and I'm super excited. So this is it. This is what it looks like. I'm just going to pop this in the oven for 8 minutes, and while it's in, I'm going to make, hey, Ted, grilling bean. This was awesome as we get grilling bands during fire season. Oh, yeah, it's really easy to do this in the oven. If you have a broiler up on top, you want to put the sheet pan right underneath it. I set it for 8 minutes. Also, if you, like I said earlier, if you don't have a broiler or you're afraid of it, you can just bake it at a really high temp, like 475 maybe. You might need to cook it a little longer at the end to get it nice and brown on top. And if you use a fattier meat, you're going to need to like kind of scrape some of the fat off. Kind of gross, but you know, otherwise it doesn't really cook properly. So the rice has 4 minutes left. That's in the oven. The next thing I make is the yogurt sauce I was telling you about. It's called mustard. This is just a quart of plain, I'm using whole milk yogurt. You can use whatever kind you like. For 1 quart, use half of an English cucumber and peel and seed it. So I had half left because like I said, I made this the other day already, but it's great for leftovers. So I'm just going to peel this. And then I'll cut it in half. And then if I haven't, I've shown this before, but if you haven't seen it or you forgot, hey Alexa, you can take, if your peeler has this little thing, you can take it, stick it where the seeds are, and it just like pulls the seeds right out. I don't mind cucumber seeds in things, like if I'm going to eat them right away, but this I'll have leftovers and the seeds might make it a little soggy. So I tend to take them out for this. And I also don't mind the peel on, but kind of bothers my husband's stomach a little bit when the peel's on cucumbers. Just turn this fan on. So I tend to take it off for them. I'm gonna chop this cucumber up. You can make it as big or as small as you want. I just kind of go for a kind of small dice. If you were making like a more involved version of this side, you can add walnuts and raisins. It's really good. Sometimes I'll add a little bit of honey to make it sweet, like just a tad sweet, especially if you're adding walnuts and stuff. But for this today, I'm just using cucumber, a little lemon juice, some dried mint, and salt. I want to learn how to make, there's this garlic, yogurt garlic dip that's delicious. Hey, Ellen. There's a yogurt garlic dip spread that's delicious that I've had at Persian restaurants before. And I've never made it, but it's so good, especially if you like yogurt and garlic, which I do. So I will report back if I make a good recipe for that or find a good recipe for it. I might need to just go do some QC research at my local Persian restaurant. If you're in Westchester County, New York, Yaranush is a great Middle Eastern market. I think an Armenian family runs it. It's a really nice one. And there's also Shiraz is a kitchen and also a market. They have a restaurant, and then next, like one door down, is a market, and they have lots of Middle Eastern stuff. They actually have some frozen kebab that I tried once, just thinking like, oh, this will be so easy, and they were great. So I've got a cucumber, a quart of yogurt. Make sure you get plain, not vanilla, because it's an easy mistake. Sometimes the plain and vanilla look similar, and it's not good. I'm going to add about a tablespoon of lemon juice. I'm just catching the seeds. I always taste it to see if I want to add more or less of anything later. And this is just a rough guideline, really. You could add more cucumber if you want. Sometimes it takes a decent amount of salt. The rice is done. That's what that beeping is. I'm just going to leave it until the kebab is out, and then I'll take everything out. So I'm going to use a teaspoon of kosher salt. You just taught me a new kitchen hack with the peeler. Right, isn't that great? The first time I realized that, I was like, I couldn't believe how much of my life I spent without knowing that that was right there. Okay, and then about a tablespoon or so of dried mint. So depending where you get your mint, it might have like some stems, it's not much, but sometimes it's not so great to chew down on. So what I like to do is I kind of rub it like this to break it up and release some of the flavors, and then I can see if or feel any big stems, and I'll take those out. It's like if you've ever at an Indian restaurant when they leave the whole spices in the rice and you accidentally bite into a clove or a cardamom pod, because the flavors are great, but a whole piece can be a bit much. So that's all I'm going to put in here for today. Just yogurt, cucumber, lemon, salt, and mint. I'm just going to stir it up. And our meal is almost ready. If you guys have any questions or requests for next Friday or a coming up Friday, for recipes that I already have on my site, or there's stuff like if you don't know how to use, I was talking to someone the other day about sealing meat in a sous vide, or with a food saver to cook sous vide. So stuff like that I just kind of do as second nature now, but might be helpful to see, or, anything. I'm always open to suggestions. So yogurt is ready. And the rice is ready. I'm just going to clean this up for a second. It happened faster than I thought it would, which is a good thing, because I am always trying to find kind of quick, easier recipes for these so that we're not sitting here like twiddling my thumbs while the kebab is in the oven or while something's in the oven for a while, because that's never fun. What meat did you use? So this was beef. I used 93% lean if you can find it, because you'll see when I pull it out of the oven, there's not a lot of like juice that drips out if you use 93% lean. If you use, I'm assuming lamb might be a little fattier. I don't know that I've ever seen like different percentages of leanness for lamb. I know they do for like turkey and chicken. It's usually either, it'll say like 99% lean, it's just the breast meat, or it'll be, ground turkey, and that's like a mix usually of white and dark meat. If someone doesn't care for cucumber, what could work as a substitute in the sauce? I think jicama might work. Oh yeah, that would give it a nice crunch. I like the cool, yeah, I think jicama might work. If you try that, let me know, because I would be curious to see how that turns out. You could omit it, and like I said, walnuts and raisins, that'll give it, or just the walnuts if you just want a little crunch. Maybe a little bit more lemon juice would help. So right now we're halfway. You can see the meat starting to brown. There's a little bit of juices coming out. The tomatoes are blistering. So what I do here is I just carefully, so I don't rip the foil, I just flip over each kebab, and I'm going to pop it back in for another like 5 minutes, I think. Yeah. That's, again, what works with my broiler. And that will get the meat cooked all the way through, and cooked through enough that it's got like a nice crust on top. Again, you could also grill this. If you have one of those veggie grilling trays, you could put the tomatoes and onions in that. I usually, when my husband's grilling, I'll always ask if I can like throw a pint of tomatoes in there, because I love grilled tomatoes. So flipped over now. If any of the onions are getting too dark, you can always flip those over also. I don't think it's necessary for something that cooks this quick, but so I'm going to set for another 5. Let's see. Any other questions? Let me know. Let's see. I had a couple other things to tell you. I've done some reading. My husband says with our electric stove oven to keep the door propped a little bit when you broil. And I've looked into it, and from what I can tell, a gas, so if you Google why you should leave the broiler door open, the top answer says that a gas oven broils at a higher temperature, which can cause more smoke. So if you leave that door open with a gas oven, your smoke all over your kitchen, and it won't be good. If you close the door when broiling in an electric oven, the temperature will cycle, so it makes the cooking process uneven. So I've been leaving it open now when I broil, and it seems to be working better. It takes longer if you close it with a gas stove, but I mean with an electric stove. But again, you know, Q&A or trial and error, figure out what works with yours. Do you have a good roti recipe? Oh my gosh, I have not. I've eaten roti. I've never made it, but I will. I'm going to write that down because I would love to. If I find a good one, I will send a link to you. I've been experimenting with low country boils. Would love to see something like in that realm on Facebook Live. Oh, like with shrimp and or crawfish, which I don't really get that often here, but potatoes and corn and that type of stuff. I have a killer shrimp cocktail recipe that I did inspired by Beetlejuice, like the scene at the dinner table where they have the shrimp cocktail and it comes up and like grabs their faces, where I flavor the water to boil the shrimp. So basically you, I think it's like peppercorns and bay leaf and an onion that I just like slice in half or something, and you boil that in the water first, so you flavor the water that you then will cook the seafood in, so that it has more flavor, but it like releases the flavor from the ingredients first, and then you kind of quickly cook the shrimp in there and chill it. But that does sound delicious. If you're in the Ossining area and you haven't already signed up, if you have teenagers, I'm going to be teaching a cooking class for 6 weeks to, I think it's like 7th and 8th graders for their BEAMS program. That's BEAMS, not beans like cooking beans. That one should be a lot of fun. I'm excited to see, I have a bunch of ideas, but I'm excited to see what the kids actually want to learn to cook. I've been told that some of the kids just want to eat, but some of them will definitely be interested in learning to cook. So I have a lot of fun things planned, and I think next week, the first week, I think we're going to be making challah French toast. Nice, easy way to like ease into cooking if you're not used to it. And everybody loves breakfast, as far as I know. But also maybe some like food trivia games and stuff like that. If you have teenagers, but you're not in the area, and you have suggestions on what they would like to see that you think that the kids here would like to see and learn to cook, let me know. So that's almost done. I'm gonna go ahead and see. I usually have my Instant Pot over a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and let the pressure come out of this. And as soon as you release it, when you have the dill in there, it smells like dill and basmati rice, and it's great. If you wanted to go kind of legit Persian with this, you could, I mean, as much as it can be legit for a quick recipe, you could also add a little bit of butter in here. So I'm just kind of stirring it around because the dill doesn't necessarily distribute evenly. And I haven't tried putting lima beans in it when I've made it in the Instant Pot, but this rice is great with lima beans in it, so maybe I'll try that next time. So I'm going to start my plate just with some of this. It's got all those flecks of green in it. Sometimes it needs a little more salt, just kind of depends. So do that. I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit of butter to put in there. And like I said, I do have a few recipes on my site for Persian rice that you soak, or that you, there's one I have with a tahdig on the bottom that has potatoes, and not in the Instant Pot, but forms a crust on the bottom of the rice. So when you go to serve it, you flip it, and it's got this really great texture. When I was a kid, sorry, realize you can't see me. When I was a kid, I didn't like the crispy rice, and now that I'm an adult, I'm like, I understand why my brother was always like, oh good, you don't like that? I'll just take that. So there's our kebab. Everything is nice and charred. So I'm just gonna put on, normally I would have made 8 pieces, but I wasn't doing it super evenly today. So I'm just gonna put some of those on there, some of the tomatoes and onions. If you don't make rice to go with this, you could put the kebab, you might want to cut it up a little bit, but you could put it in a pita with feta. You could put the veggies right in there, even though tomatoes a fruit technically. You could put it in, yeah, have it as a sandwich with feta. You can just use plain yogurt. Yesterday when I made this, we just had plain Greek yogurt and some sliced cucumbers on the side. I like a lot of yogurt. I'll probably add more than that when I go in at the table. But I'm just going to put a little tiny bit of butter in the rice and kind of cover it so it melts down in there. And then the last thing to really make this legit Persian delicious is ground sumac. If you ever have gone to a Persian restaurant and you've seen salt, pepper, and this little like brown spice, this is sumac. It's great on meats. I like sprinkling it over everything, but definitely on meat. So that is it. It really only takes, I mean, how long have I been live? Can I see? 31 minutes, but I was talking. It really can be done in about 20 minutes, all of it. And then I'll show you inside the kebab. It's nice and juicy, but get all the flecks of parsley and the onion without the hassle of grating an onion is why I use the dried onion flakes. If you have pita or lavash, that's a Persian style of flatbread, you can, make little individual bites, little sandwiches with it. Really however you like to do it. So this is one of my favorite meals. I've been making it a lot. I haven't posted it yet, but I will soon. I'll just have to make it again for photo purposes. And yeah, let me see if there's any other questions. I would like to know how to make crispy Persian rice. I have one recipe, maybe two, on my site. There's a link to all the Persian ones in the description here, but I have, I think it's called Polo. I don't remember how to pronounce it, but I definitely have it. I'll make a note to send it to you, Ellen. I've seen methods for making it in the Instant Pot, but I have not actually tried it. And beware, I did recently try to make the soaked Persian rice, and for some reason the basmati I got fell apart. It like totally disintegrated after soaking. So yeah. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you have any questions as always, and I will see you next week. Bye.